going to talk about the commutative and associative properties and apply that to solving math problems. So the first problem, number 112, says Juno was working on simplifying the expression 24 plus 3 plus negative 4 plus 7. And he said, I know the answer must be 30 because 10 plus 20 is 30. So answer these two questions, part A and part B, on your paper first, and then type your answer into Edpuzzle when prompted. So here's how you should have answered this. Is Juno correct? Yes, the answer is 30. But how did he get 20 and how did he get 10? Well, what he did is he moved the numbers around. And to get 20, he did 24 plus negative 4, and that gives you 20. And then to get the 10, he moved the numbers around to get 3 plus 7, which is 10. Because it's easier to add 20 plus 10 plus 20 and get the answer. So Juno used two properties. The first one was the commutative property. The commutative property says that you can change the order of the numbers. For example, the original problem said 24 plus 3 plus negative 4 plus 7. But what Juno did is he took the 3 and the negative 4 and he just switched the order. So now he could do 24 plus negative 4 and then he could do 3 plus 7. The next property he used was the associative property. This says that you can group numbers differently instead of going from left to right. So for example, he already switched the order of the numbers, but now he could do 24 plus negative 4, which is 20. Then he can do 3 plus 7, which is 10. And then he can add that to get 30. So what we're going to look at is, does the commutative property work for other operations? For example, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So we're going to take a look at different equations and determine if you can actually switch the order of the numbers and get the same answer. So the commutative property is typically called the order property because we want to see if we can switch the order of the numbers and still get the same answer. So right now, what I want you to do is figure out what 10 minus 2 is and figure out what 2 minus 10 is. Write your answers down in your notes and then decide if you get the same answer. Can you switch the order of the numbers and get the same answer? So then write yes or no if it works and type in your answer in Edpuzzle. So 10 minus 2 or 10 plus negative 2 is 8. 2 plus negative 10 is negative 8. So does this work for subtraction? No, you do not get the same answer. Now try to see if it works for multiplication. Get your answer or write down your answer for 2 times 10 and 10 times 2. And then write in your answer in Edpuzzle. Does this work or not? Can you switch the order and get the correct answers? So 2 times 10 is 20, 10 times 2 is 20, so yes, you can switch the order of the numbers in multiplication and still get the same answer. Finally, for division, you can use your calculator for this one, for 2 divided by 10, to see if you get the same answer, and then type in yes or no in Edpuzzle to see if this works for division. So if I get 5 and I get 0.2, does division work? No. Division does not work with the commutative property. I cannot switch the order of the numbers and still get the same answer. So it looks like the commutative property only works for addition and multiplication. So let's take a look at the associative property. Does this also work for subtraction, multiplication, and division? Can you group the numbers differently and still get the same answer? So what you're going to work on is you're going to look at these problems and figure out the answer and see if you get the same answer if we group them differently. So again, work the problem out on your sheet of paper and then type in yes if it works, no if it doesn't in Edpuzzle. So 12 minus 3 is 9. So if I do 20 minus 9, I actually get 11. For the next problem, 20 minus 12 is 8, and 8 minus 3 is 5. So no, this does not work for subtraction. You can't group numbers differently and get the same answer for subtraction. Now do the same for multiplication. Figure out your answer and then type in yes or no if it works. So when we change the grouping for multiplication, notice that we got the same answer both times, 30 and 30. So does this work for multiplication? Yes. And finally, division. If we try this with division, you can use your calculator for this one. Type it in using the parentheses button on your calculator. If you have a hard time finding that parentheses button, ask your teacher right now. But figure out the answer and then type in yes or no in Edpuzzle. So for this problem, you get 2 or you get 8. And so no, division is not associative. You cannot change the grouping for division and get the same answer. So what happens is the commutative and the associative properties both work for addition and multiplication. They do not work for subtraction or division. But we can change subtraction problems so they are addition problems, and then you can apply these properties. So rewrite this expression as an addition problem right now in your notes. What you're going to get is 7 plus negative 2 and then plus 4. Now, does grouping matter when you rewrite the problem? Can I do 7 plus negative 2 or can I do negative 2 plus 4? Grouping doesn't matter, and the order doesn't matter. So now that it's addition, I can move numbers around. I can do the operation at the end of the problem or the beginning of the problem. It doesn't really matter. So no, grouping or order, neither one is going to matter now. So change each of these problems to addition and then use the properties that we just discussed to get your answer. And then type in the correct answer for each problem in Edpuzzle. For each one of these, you are going to change addition to adding the opposite, or sorry, subtraction to adding the opposite. So when I do that, now I can move numbers around and I can group negatives together, group my positives together to get the answer. Lots of different ways to figure out what those answers are. Now for problem 115, change each subtraction problem into addition and then solve. But remember, if you see multiplication, you're going to have to do that first. So for like part B, you're going to have to do the 2 times 3 first, and you're going to have to do 2 times negative 4 first. Then you can go through and change subtraction to addition, and then you can move your numbers around. So practice that, and then type in your answers into Edpuzzle when you're done. So for problem 116, Maria and Jorge were trying to simplify this expression. So you're multiplying 3 fractions, and one of them happens to be a mixed number. So look at Maria's work. The first thing she did was change the mixed number into an improper fraction, and she got 7/5. The next thing she did was took the last two fractions, 7/5 times -3/4, and she got -21/20. And then she did her multiplication, and she ended up with this answer, 1 2/5. But Jorge wants to do something different. He wants to actually switch the order of the fractions, and he would like to multiply -4/3 times -3/4. Now remember, when you're multiplying fractions, you can look for cross-simplifying, or not. If I multiply the numerators, 4 times 3 is 12, and 3 times 4 is also 12. The first fraction is negative, and the second one is also negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. So 12 divided by 12 is just 1. You also could have simplified 4 and 4. If you divide by 4, they become 1s. 3 and 3 divide by 3, and they become 1s. So again, you end up with 1/1, which is the same as 1. So if I take this answer times 1 2/5, what do I get? I just get 1 2/5. So think about whose work was a little easier. Jorge's, and it was because he switched the order of the fractions. And that was using the commutative property. He did that so that the problem would be much easier, and he knew that this equals 1. And that would be easier to figure out the answer. So what you are going to do is, in your notes packet, you're going to solve the 3 problems for part C here. And then you are going to click on your answers in Edpuzzle. Now work this problem out and click on the correct answer in Edpuzzle after you've worked it out on your paper. And remember to try cross-simplifying for this problem. So 12 and 3 can be divided by 3, so that becomes 1 and 4. 4 and 4 could actually both be divided by 4, so we'll make that a 1. And so now what we have is -5 times 1 times 1 in the numerator. And in the denominator, I have 1 times 7 times 9. So we get -5 60/3. And again, for this one, just figure out the answer and then type in what it would be in Edpuzzle and then check your answer. What I'm going to use here is I'm going to use the associative property because I can do 5 times 2 to get 10. Now I can go back and do -8 times 10 because that's easier to figure out. So it's -80. So you're finished with the video portion of this section. So now you're going to go to the properties practice in Edpuzzle. You are going to work through each problem, then click on the correct answer in Edpuzzle.